Hi folks, Stein North here. This is another video on Live or Die Off the Land series. This video, I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. Um, this is the intro portion of the video, and then the back portion of this video is a slideshow of many of the food items, plant and animal life, of this region where I'm at. Um, Central and northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the upper peninsula of Michigan, those areas. Um, and what this particular video is about is the nutritional values as far as calories are concerned in wild plant life and wildlife in this region. And the slideshow portion is going to give you just quick snapshots of many different types of wild foods there are in this area, and what we call the caloric investment, what it is, the caloric value, and what that is in comparison to the investment. It'll talk about some of the higher beneficial properties of each food, such as, is it high in protein, is it high in iron or vitamin C, those types of issues, and a little note on the preservation of that type of food so that you have some idea of how would it be preserved for long term, because in a live off the land, in a raw nature situation where you're a hunter-gatherer, you will have to put up enough foodstuffs to get you through the winter. So how do you prep for that? Okay, but this intro video portion, I want to just quickly discuss why the importance of caloric investment versus caloric value, what the importance of that is. Many people say, oh, you could just go out and you could survive on this. If you just had that, you could get by. Well, I'm going to give you a couple of quick examples. I'm just going to kind of hop around some of these items. I've done, it's been over a long period of time, I've been building kind of a database of the caloric values of different foods out in the wild, and I've broken that down into those foods compared to a 2,000 calorie per day diet. And I'm going to give you some examples. Now, if you were in the outdoors, let's think about this. Now, you're out there trying to live off the land. Now, okay, I'm going to take one for example. I'm going to start with blueberries, okay? I love blueberries. Now, blueberries are very beneficial. They have a lot of vitamins in them. They've got vitamin C. They've got a calorie value of 83 calories to 1 cup of whole wild blueberries. Now, that's 83 calories. You need 2,000 calories a day. Now, I'm going to hear from people saying, oh no, you can get by on 15, you can get by on 1,200. The fact of the matter is at rest, if all you do is rest all day long, and you have a 24-hour period of being at rest and or sleeping, you're going to burn on the average of 1,000 to 1,700 calories per day, just at rest, not doing a thing. Now, if that's true, a 2,000 calorie per day diet, and you're active, you're collecting firewood, you're going and getting water, you're doing the necessary camp chores, you are definitely going to be burning that 2,000 calories per day. So that means you need to replace those 2,000 calories, and ideally, you would have a net gain in calories, okay, so that you can maintain a certain level of fats in your system. Um, Back to blueberries. So if there are 83 calories in 1 cup of blueberries, you would have to eat 24 cups of blueberries per day. That's 1.5 gallons. Are you going to be able to consume 1.5 gallons of blueberries in a day? Maybe, but I sure wouldn't want to visit your latrine. Uh, I wouldn't want to put the caloric investment into harvesting that many blueberries just to eat for that one day, and I'll probably come up with a simple caloric balance. My investment, my gain, it's a wash. No extra calories in the event that the next day I may not have as much caloric value to take in. So I have no spare energy, no reserves, okay? Now, if you were to eat just the blueberries at 1.5 gallons a day, well, that's 10.5 gallons per 7-day week. You could not do that. Now, here's what I want to show, why it's important to know the caloric values versus the investment. Now, caloric investment is all of your effort in harvesting or securing that food item. The caloric value is what are those calories that you've harvested worth after they're consumed. So if you burned 1,000 calories, and in that 1,000 calories of investment, you harvested 1,500 calories worth of food, and you consume that 1,500 calories, you have a net gain of 500 calories. That's very good. That'd be excellent. So that's what you need to know. You don't want a negative caloric value, because if your caloric value is low or very low, that means you put more effort into collecting that foodstuffs than what you're gaining back when you consume it. Now here's a good example. Blueberries sounded really extreme, didn't it? Having to eat 24 cups a day. Strawberries, wild strawberries, I don't mean grocery store strawberries. 1 cup of whole wild strawberries only has 46 calories in it. Less calories than blueberries, almost half. That means you would have to consume 43.5 cups of strawberries per day to meet your caloric requirements. The thing is, does that mean you shouldn't be picking strawberries? No, it does not mean that. It means that you're going to have to replace some of that effort, some of that investment with a different type of foodstuffs, because you're going to have a negative caloric value picking strawberries. There are some positive gains that are non-caloric. Strawberries are very high in vitamin C. So yes, you do want to harvest those, but you do need to replace those with a higher caloric gain. Now, I'm going to jump, that's just an example in the plant life area. Oh, I'm going to throw one out that I really like, and that's acorns. Now, acorns, believe it or not, after acorns have been soaked, we'll discuss in future videos the proper way to harvest and prepare acorns for consumption, but you can't eat acorns raw. Do not do that. I've seen people take acorns, break them open, start eating them like peanuts, and I tell them, you can't be doing that. They're full of tannic acid, and they will make you ill. You have to soak out the tannic acid, and there's different methods of getting the tannic acid out. Some take a little more effort than others. So we will discuss that in a future video. But prepared acorns that are ready to eat, 1 cup of prepared acorns has 891 calories. That's only 2 cups a day of acorn that you would have to eat to meet your 2,000 calories. Now there's a huge net caloric value gain. That's a good example of an excellent caloric value gain. Plus acorns are okay, where am I here? They're very high in calcium and iron, and there's 16 grams of protein in acorns, which makes them very beneficial because they're one of the few wild plant items out there that has a high level of protein. The others are in the 1 to 3 gram range. Some come up as high as 7 grams per cup, but acorns, very high in protein. Okay, now we're going to jump quick to meats just to show the difference there. 1 pound of if my computer's not behaving. Okay, an example: squirrels. For 1 pound of squirrel, excuse me, for 1 pound of squirrel, there's 544 calories. That means you would have to eat just about 4 pounds per day to meet your caloric value. Now, large gray squirrels or fox squirrels, that'd mean about 4 squirrels. Little pine squirrels, the red squirrels that you find out running around the forest typically, you would probably need 6 of those per pound. So you're talking about 20 red squirrels per day. I've never seen 20 red squirrels in a day. So I don't even think that you could make your caloric requirement for in a day on squirrel. But if you have a couple of squirrels and you have a couple of other animals and some plant foods and you combine them to meet your caloric requirement, you're in good shape. Now I'm going to show you the difference in critters, for crying out loud. A squirrel, 1 pound, 544 calories. Raccoon, 1 pound, 1,736 calories. You will only need 1.2 pounds of raccoon per day to survive, to get by, to meet your caloric value. The meat off of 1 raccoon averages about 5 pounds of actual meat. So you've got 4 days of food with 1 raccoon. And you only have 1/4 of a day with 1 squirrel. Okay? That kind of shows the difference there. Now, you get into nice, all the meat products provide you with high caloric values, and the concern with meat products, with using animal life, is the effort you have to put into procuring that meat. So that has to be taken into consideration. So that's just some examples of why it's important to look at your caloric investment versus your caloric value. That you are not putting out more than you're actually taking in. And out in the outdoors, in the raw wilderness, living off the land, we need to take advantage of the things we know today and apply it to our attempts to live off the land. Because in the past, people just ate whatever they could. Whatever was edible, they collected and stored as much as possible. And they did learn that certain foods sustain them better and longer. You don't have time to learn that. Those folks were born into living off the land as hunters gatherers. We are trying to learn to be hunters and gatherers, so let's do it wisely. So with that, let's move on with the video, and I hope you enjoy the slideshow portion, and thanks for tagging along, folks.
Wild edible plants. As we move along, we're going to start out with wild blueberries. Everybody loves blueberries. Now, if you're trying to live off the land, wild blueberries is a seasonal, delicious form of nutrition that they're moderately hard to harvest. They provide a moderate amount of caloric values. But you cannot really collect enough to sustain yourself on them. But I would strongly suggest that a person try to harvest what they can, dehydrate as many as possible, and have some for future use, especially during the winter months. They can be a very key part of a long-term living off the land situation. So we'll take it from there to the wild strawberry. Oh, my favorite trail snack. Wild strawberries are kind of difficult to collect in any large volume. They're a little tougher than blueberries to acquire. Sometimes you get into a really good patch. They have kind of a low caloric value. They provide a lot of sugars for instant energy. And again, you can store them by dehydrating them, and they'll keep forever after they've been dehydrated. And it's nice if you have plenty of them during the season. Put some up. Keep them around for the winter. Winters can be long, and strawberries can make them that much easier to get through. And our next wild edible, red or black raspberries. Oh, wild raspberries, another grab it while you can when you're hiking around during the summer months, during their short season. And they can be more prolific. There's a little more available in the sense that the bushes really produce a lot and over a good period of time. So you can put up quite a few wild raspberries throughout the season. And after you've got your wild raspberries collected and you dehydrate them, you can have plenty of wild raspberries throughout the winter to supplement your food sources, and they provide a lot of vitamin C. So I strongly suggest anytime you can get your hands on wild raspberries, dehydrate them, keep them for the following winter. Now, our next one is the Jerusalem artichoke. Not truly that common throughout our region. Central Minnesota, central Wisconsin, you find it more often, and you usually find it along open fields, and it can be difficult at times to find. But if you find yourself into a patch of Jerusalem artichoke, it's a very good food source. It's very high in iron, typical root crop, and it's got vitamin C, a lot of vitamin C. So it is a good foodstuffs for living off the land. However, it does not keep well for long term, but you can harvest it throughout the season, throughout the year. A little difficult in the winter, but it's a good foodstuff. Now, cattails. Cattails, you really, the food value in them are early season. You want the young shoots, the roots, the cattail heads when they're young and green. They're tender. Some people say they compare them to asparagus when steamed. very, very good product to collect during the season. The pollen from cattail heads can be collected and used for thickening soups. Some people add it to flour or use it as a flour substitute. The pollen is rather easy to collect and can be stored as long as it's kept dry and in a cool, dark place. So now we're going to move on to burdock. Burdock root. Everybody knows burdocks, at least I hope they do. If you've ever had a large dog and they go running out and they come back and they're all covered in those burrs, many of which come from the burdock plant. The root can be 3 to 6 feet long, and it's a tuber, and it's like a potato, and it's very nutritious. The real values in the burdock root, you can prepare it just like a potato, or you can roast it on an open fire. But they're high in potassium, and they have vitamin C, calcium, and iron. Their burdock root is actually very good for you, and it's actually best if you harvest it in the fall, winter months. But it's hard to harvest through frozen ground. Well, now here's my favorite, acorns. Very easy to collect. Anywhere where there's oak trees, and in Wisconsin and Minnesota, tons of oak trees. And wherever there's oak trees, there's usually tons of acorns. Like, as I said, very easy to collect, very low caloric investment in collecting them, and a very high caloric return on them. They're very, very tricky to consume, though. You have to soak them. There's a process of soaking them to get the tannic acids out of them. You cannot eat these raw, but they're an awesome food source, and they can be dried and preserved and kept over the winter. They can be ground into flours, added to soups, all kinds of things. Acorns are just great. Okay, our next item is, it's the wintercress or yellow rocket. Wintercress and yellow rocket is it's very well known by all those that know wild edibles as being a year-round, especially a winter food stuff, survival food stuff. The only problem is it takes a lot of work to collect any large amount of wintercress, and it has a low caloric value. It has some. It's more, in my mind, more of a medicinal or supplemental plant, and it's high in vitamin A and vitamin C, which is beneficial because you want to make sure you keep your vitamin C levels up, especially during the winter months. So it doesn't hurt to collect it in the winter, and it is eaten fresh. I don't know how to preserve it, so well. Now we're going to move on to wild rice. Wild rice is just there's no better foodstuffs out there. It can be a little difficult to harvest. Excuse me. And it grows in standing water, so it's very difficult to reach. If you have a boat or some way to get to it, and you can collect it, it's got a very high caloric value, and it's full of minerals. There's really, as a foodstuffs in the form of starches, you can't probably get anything better than wild rice. So wild rice, if you can find a patch of it, it's not that uncommon, but you do need to look for standing water for wild rice to grow. So and it can be stored for indefinite amount of time if it's kept in a cool, dark place. Okay, we're moving on to wild animal food sources. These are just a few examples, and we're going to start with squirrel. Okay, squirrels. There, a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, you could live on squirrels. There's so many of them." Well, actually, there aren't as many squirrels as a person might think. If you look at their caloric value, it's very high, and to procure a squirrel can be rather simple actually. Um, and so they are a good viable source of proteins and fats. The fats are rather low in a squirrel, however. They're more like a rabbit. Um, but they are very high in protein and iron, so they are a good sustainable meat source. However, they are not very large and there aren't that many of them. So for a sustainable, I I don't know if it's a real sustainable source. And then we have the raccoon. This little bugger, he actually provides a lot of caloric value. Um, and he's less common than a squirrel, but he's much larger than a squirrel. A raccoon's probably 4 to 5 times the size of a large squirrel. Um, and because he provides such high amounts of caloric value, he would be a preferred game animal if you have them in your area. And in Wisconsin and Minnesota, again, they are very common. They're not prolific, but they're very common. They're high in fat, cholesterol, potassium, protein, and iron. So it's a very good foodstuff for long-term sustainability. And they can be preserved by jerking them or smoking them, just like any other red meat. Now we're going to go on to salmon and trout. Hey, I I love fish. I love fish, and this is one fish that is absolutely good for you. Very high caloric value. They're rather easily procured. They are packed full of omega-3 oils because of all the fats in trout and salmon. A very preferred protein source. If you can find yourself a creek or river or lake that supports salmon and trout, that is a preferred source of proteins. If you can procure it, that would be a very good source. And it can be preserved by drying, dehydrating, drying, or smoking. Long cold smoking will preserve them for quite a long time, and you can keep them over the winter, and they're available all winter. Other freshwater fish. Now, there's so many. You've got the sunfish, you've got crappies, you've got the northern pike, you've got walleyes, you've got bass, all kinds of freshwater fish. Very easy to catch and very high in caloric value. And they're so abundant. I can catch a couple dozen sunfish in an hour in most lakes in northern Wisconsin and Minnesota. They're very high in potassium, protein, vitamins A, calcium. They're just so good for you. Freshwater fish, get yourself near a lake if you're talking about long-term living off the land, and you should be able to fare fairly well. And they're easy to process. Now, frogs. Not my preferred dish. Now, for many people, frogs are a delicacy and they love them. I see them as they're rather difficult to catch in any volume, in any true large amount, and they have a fair amount of caloric value. However, you have to have so many of them. It takes so many frogs to actually give you any caloric benefit. And they are a good source of protein and iron. However, because they're so difficult to catch, I put them kind of low on the list. The preservation of them I am not aware of. Just eat them fresh. Cook them the day you catch them. Venison. Here's the big one. Now we're getting into large animals. And these are the most sustainable forms of food you will find in the wilderness or the outdoors if you're in a long-term live off the land situation. It takes time to procure a deer. The time is not very caloric, it's not much of a caloric negative. So by the time you get one, it is well earned. They are so high in caloric value, provide all the proteins and sources of iron and minerals that you need. One of the best game animals you can procure, and it takes a little effort, but preservation is straightforward. Jerk it, smoke it. You can make pemmican with it. Now we're moving on to the black bear. Now you get your hands on a black bear, and can be very difficult to procure a black bear, much more so than a deer. However, the caloric value is very high. The benefits of it far exceed the effort you would put into procuring a bear, and you would preserve it like you would a deer. Jerk it, smoke it. I don't know about making pemmican from it, but I would suspect you could. They're very high in fats, proteins, and iron, all of which you need to have the energy necessary to live off the land. So a bear is a good source that you would want to consider. Now, upland game birds. Now, a lot of people would say there's tons of birds. I see grouse all the time. I see wild turkeys. But you don't see enough to sustain a person for very long. So their caloric value is moderate. It takes a lot of effort to go hiking all over the place trying to find a bird to shoot. So taking of the bird can be difficult, and the amount of calories you're going to burn up trying to get that bird versus what you get from the bird can be a net negative. They're high in protein, but they're very low in fats, and you do need fat. So you could not for a long-term basis survive strictly on upland birds. It would just not work. And then we have waterfowl, geese and ducks. Now, they're a little different than upland birds because they have a lot of fats. There's a lot of fats in geese and ducks. If you've eaten goose or duck before, you'll know what I'm talking about. And the caloric values are very high, and they can be procured rather easily if you have that skill set. They can be snared, they can be trapped, they can be you could take one down with a slingshot. So yeah, there's all different ways you can get a goose or a duck. And during the season when they're around, they're pretty plentiful. So they're a wonderful source of nutrition. And preserve them, jerk or smoke them. That's eat them fresh or make jerky or smoke the bird. The last critter is insects. And now I'm not going to go too far into insects because that would be my last resort. And there's not enough insects to make the collecting value worth. It's an offset. The energy you put into collecting bugs, you will get that energy back from eating the bugs. So you don't have a net gain on the food values, but they are very, very high in carbohydrates, protein, calcium, and iron. Very high. So if you can handle eating bugs, they really are a good food source if you can get them in a large quantity. And make sure that they're not poisonous. And you can keep them by dehydrating them. Now, that's the end of this quick caloric value discussion. I hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye now.